So for me, my greatest achievements are the things that there would be no trophy on the shelf for. It's learning to be the best version of me, the true version of me.
No matter where you live, the values you carry with you are what shape your life. Through her experiences, Shonda Rushing continues to thrive and inspire by leading with respect, embracing forgiveness, and treating others with the love they deserve. Thank you for joining Lynn Foley, host of Remarkable Women Powerful Stories, as we hear from Shonda about her journey.
Being born and raised in Mississippi, probably about 5 or 6 years after the ending of Jim Crow, there was a lot of tension in the South at that time. But the thing that stands out so much to me is that there was no hint of racism that we experienced. There was no blatant racism that we experienced. And the way my mother raised us, the racism that she experienced in her lifetime didn't bleed into how she raised us. So we were raised to be very respectful of each other and of everyone we met. It didn't matter whether or not they looked like you. And, that Southern hospitality, yes, ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. And so that has remained a part of me, to always be respectful of everyone in the room, no matter where they're from, no matter what they're doing, no matter what they look like. And that has been my guiding force, that all people deserve love and respect, no matter how they treat you. So that has stuck with me my entire life.
So did that come mainly from your mother, Shonda, do you think?
Yes, it really did. She was our the north on the compass. She is where I got my values from. She had a set of standards, and the way she loved us is the way we love others. You train up children, in the way that you want them to go. And even though life gives you all kinds of experiences, that training doesn't leave you. You have a choice whether or not you're going to follow it, but it doesn't leave you. And it has served me well.
Yeah. So when we first chatted a couple of weeks ago, you spoke of learning how and then coming to forgiveness and also learning to trust, which I know came off some incredibly challenging circumstances. How important has all this been to support you to overcome or live with those life-changing events and challenges?
It has been very important because of the power of forgiveness. Forgiveness is probably the most powerful spiritual medication that you can ever have. You can take it every day. You can take it several times a day as needed, and there are never any negative side effects. Unforgiveness is kind of like snake venom. If you could imagine the most venomous snake known to man, the inland taipan, forgiveness would be the antivenom that would stop that venom from infecting all of your organs and poisoning your blood and causing the greatest amount of damage. So learning to forgive has been one of the most powerful lessons of my life. And it is so because this was the thing that made it so powerful for me. I learned that forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation. What people want, or what keeps people from forgiving, is they want to be restored to where they were before the breach.
Yep.
And no one can give you that. No one can take you back. You're never going to be that person again. So for me, forgiveness looks like thanking you for introducing me to a stronger version of myself. And so that's what made it easier for me to do. I'm not releasing you. I'm not saying what you did was okay. What I'm saying is I don't want to die from the poison of trying to hold on to it. And I can wholeheartedly forgive you and not give you access to sacred spaces that you don't have the capacity to respect. So I learned that the best way to forgive and love people is to give them a relationship that they can steward. And I think that's how it helped me, learning to forgive and to trust like that. And learning to do it and to feel it its an entirety. I had learned to numb the pain of not having my father and the anger about being in pain. I numbed all of that with food. And so not trusting was just a byproduct of not being able to depend on him, but still wanting to be able to depend on him. And I wanted it so badly that I placed on him a responsibility that he could not bear. So I created my own cycle of mistrust because he was who he was and not who I wanted him to be.
And so wasn't ever able to do that and become that dependable person that you wanted.
Absolutely. So I had to stop my own cycle. I was creating it. And so I had to stop it. And so it was really overcoming and living with, overcoming who I wanted him to be and trusting that he is who he is. And that's the path.
So that's an incredibly mature and sophisticated approach, though, isn't it? And skill or capability or mindset to be able to put yourself there. Were you a young person when you came to that, or did it take you quite some time into your life before you actually reached it?
It started when I was 18. It definitely took me some years of maturing, because when you're really young and the people who are supposed to validate you violate you in any kind of way, that bleeds into all of your relationships. And so you make bad decisions. Well, I made bad decisions in relationships, because what you focus on, you attract. And so if you focus really on the things you don't have, life gives you more of what you don't have, and you keep finding the same thing in different faces. And so again, I was creating the cycle with what I was focusing on. And so it took a while, but it was definitely worth the journey.
So speaking of journeys and pathways, you've taken a number of different those pathways and journeys to where you are right now. On each of these, I recall that you've taken critical moments, you've found critical moments, and then they showed you the way forward. Can you please explore some of these moments and how they influenced what came next, or the turning points, if you prefer?
Wow, I've definitely been on a lot of different pathways. I think every single time I have moved, it has been in some kind of way a spiritual thing. It's always been for God or for, church. There was some spiritual piece that I found that I needed, and I need to go here so that I can get it. And I remember moving away from Jackson, Mississippi to another city to work. And what made me move was there was a church that was there that I attended. And I realized I need this piece. I need this piece in my life. And so I moved. And then when it was time to move again, it was the same thing. Like this, I have this. Things are not going well. It's time to pivot. And the pivot was always centered around a spiritual principle or some spiritual thing that I needed. So all of my pathways have had the same kind of beacon that got my attention. It was a light that captured my attention, that you need to come this way. And so it's always been, God's always been my pivot point for every single path, every turning point, every major point. There's always been a church involved And I was attending, and I was like, I need to be here. And I knew intrinsically that I needed to be there.
Mm.
And I always moved with it. Afraid or not, I would do it. I would move with it, and let's just see what happens. And it has always worked.
So in those critical moments, one that you outlined to me was a little while back. You had an opportunity from a CEO to attend the Leadership Academy. I'm wondering if you can share that experience deeply with me, and how during the program and after it and since, that's really affected you and who you are and where you are right now.
This was at a really critical time for me because I felt stuck. I had entered a point in my life where it seemed like nothing was happening. And it's rare that you have, or that you feel like there's nothing happening spiritually, emotionally, personally, or on the job. There was nothing happened, and I just felt stuck. And I need something more. I know there is more to my life than this. And I got the opportunity from the CEO. He introduced me to the Leadership Academy. And I thought, great. I felt like I'm a leader. I'm definitely a leader. This would be a great opportunity for me. I didn't realize the opportunity that it would be for me. I didn't realize the maturity that it would push me into. I didn't realize that this would be the thing that would force me out of obscurity. Literally force me out of obscurity and made me be seen. And I had created a nice little space for myself where I could avoid being seen as much as possible. And yeah, it forced me to be seen. And forcing me out of obscurity and making me be seen, it pulled me out of the box that I had created for myself. And that would have been okay if it didn't tear up the box on the way out. And so now I couldn't go back into it. And so it was either fly or die. You are up here. Now, either you're going to flap your wings and you're going to fly, or you're going to hit the ground. And that opportunity is what did that for me. It was one of the most scary, it was one of the scariest things I'd ever been involved in. And I thought I was really being quiet. I would say something only when asked of me. I responded to direct questions presented to me. When there were opportunities for, those of us in class to raise our hands, I would never raise my hand because I was not trying to be seen. And when the class was over, we all had to vote to decide who we wanted to represent us to be the class speaker. I certainly didn't expect it to be me, because out of, I think, 25 or 26 of us in the class, only 2 of us were African American. We were both women. And the majority of the class were, white males who did most of the talking. And I didn't mind it. So I figured it would be one of them. And I got a call that there was a unanimous vote for me to be the class speaker at the graduation. And it literally, it blew my cover. That's probably the best way to say it.
Yep, you were out there, and
Yes.
that was the end of it.
That was the end of it. There was no turning back at that point.
So did that make you step into who you really were as a leader, and was at the beginning of your voice? So I'm really interested in the rest of that story, though. I know it has a great ending.
It was the beginning. And I had I've spoken in front of crowds before, I've spoken to audiences before, but this was different. This wasn't at a church or a service. This was in front of CEOs, and I didn't feel that my voice had value in this room. And so I was literally comparing myself to the people in the audience. And We had 5 minutes. You know, the CEO of the academy said you have 5 minutes, you know, to talk to us. And I said, okay, well, great. And I was panicking inside. I was like, what am I going to say to this group of people? This is a group of CEOs and directors and managers. What they don't want to hear what I'm about to say. And I remember during the speech giving the example about the metamorphosis of a butterfly and how when a butterfly emerges from the cocoon, one, you can't help it. And even though you watch it struggle through that little tiny hole, it needs to struggle to push the excess fluid out of its body so that once it emerges, it's able to fly. But the thing about it is, no matter how beautiful that butterfly is, it never gets to see its own beauty because he can't see his wings. The beauty of the butterfly is for you. It's not for the butterfly. And it just reminds me so much of myself. You struggle to see the beauty in yourself, even though other people tell you how beautiful you are and how amazing you are. You struggle to see it, but it's not for you. Your gift is not for you. So you're not going to view it as other people would because it's not for you. Your job is just to fly.
Yeah, that's right.
Your job is just to fly. And so this situation pushed me into that, to stop trying to see it with your eyes so that you can control it and manage it and just fly. And so that's what happened from that point. And then the next year, no, that was in the summer, that November, they invited me back to open the conference. And every year since then, they have invited me back to speak at this conference. And it has been an amazing experience. And so many other opportunities have come from that 5-minute graduation speech.
So do you think, or do you know that that was the catalyst of developing that extra courage and self-belief? And now you're in a situation where you've embraced that, you've amplified your voice in community and more broadly. I'm wondering what are the achievements you're most proud of since you've taken those extra steps, because since then you've continued to do amazing things in that space. So I'm just wondering what is it that you put forward and you go, yeah, that was great. I'm really proud of that.
Oh, as you ask the question, there's a battle that happens in my mind. It's always the wrestle with pride. And you want to be, or I want to be confident in who I am. And I always wrestle with the fine line between confidence and arrogance or pride. But there are a few things that I'm really proud of. One was finally writing my book, What If I Win? That was a major accomplishment for me because it was me putting my life out for other people to see and to judge, because that's what happens. You put your story out and you don't know how it's going to be received. You just have to have the courage to tell your story. Another achievement is reaching for an opportunity that I was told was beyond my reach, and having the courage to apply for things that one might say you're not qualified for. And just because you can't afford to complete secondary education does not mean you can't afford to educate yourself. And so reaching for those opportunities and getting them is great achievement. And the last two, one is my commitment to truth. Learning to tell the truth and being committed to truth, knowing that your truth only makes you free. Your truth doesn't set anybody else free other than you. I learned that the hard way. And the last achievement that I think I'm probably most proud of is learning to be vulnerable. For me, vulnerability is taking everything that you could use to hurt me and using it to help you. So for me, my greatest achievements are the things that there would be no trophy on the shelf for.
Mm.
You know, it's learning to be the best version of me, the true version of me.
And the trophy is becoming that best version of you, though, isn't it? It doesn't have to be
Absolutely.
on the shelf. It doesn't have to be on the shelf.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, and we did have this conversation earlier, I'm keen for you to delve into what you see as the current challenges for African American women and what else needs to change to get through to that gender equality, because we're women's rights are human rights, and future generations don't experience the same difficulties. Now, throughout the world, many cultures struggle in this space of this reaching for gender equality, and many of us thought we might have been closer now, and we're not. So, in particularly for you and other women of your heritage, what's the key that might unlock that?
You know, I don't know if there's one key, you know, that would unlock it.
Right.
It is so ingrained in humanity that it's one voice at a time, one person at a time. And I think part of healing it is having the conversation about it. And I had a situation where I had an injury and I needed to go to the doctor about it. And the first doctor that I went to, it was almost as if he didn't believe when I said I'm in pain. And it is because now African American women have some of the greatest difficulty receiving adequate medical care, even post and prenatal care. And I was in there and I was waiting and I was explaining my pain level. But because I could do what he asked me to do, you know, I need you to push against me, I need you to pull, you know, in whichever direction I go in, you know, oppose it. And I could do that. It's like, I can do it, but I'm in pain. And here's the degree of pain. But because I could do it, he didn't believe when I said I was in pain. So I'm going to send you to someone else. And I had gone through this cycle a few times and I was really just getting weary with it. And I had almost decided I'll just deal with the pain. You know, I'm not trying to get strong drugs. You know, I'm not drug seeking. I just don't want to be in pain and I want to figure out what's causing the pain. And I encountered a doctor and I was explaining probably now for the fifth time what happened. Here's the pain level. And he heard me and it set off something in me, this sense of relief of finally being heard and believed. And I said to him, I said, thank you. I said, because what I wanted was to meet a doctor who cared. Like, that's all I wanted. I just wanted a doctor who cared. And rights should be based on humanity. That's the space where we are all equal. And once we divide it and we say, you know, African American, you know, Black people, white people, Asian people, Latino people, heterosexual, homosexual, once we give those categories and we divide it up, that's where we start to place where the rights, we start to base rights on those categories and divisions. But if we just say human rights, then it's all inclusive. Everyone gets the care that they need. Everyone gets the attention they need. Everyone gets the love that they need. And each of those categories, we all have fragilities. We all have them. African American women, we have a set of fragilities. White women, there's a set. Heterosexual, there's a set. Republicans, Democrats, each group that we, you know, each silo that we, you know, sever ourselves into, there are fragilities. And each group wants their own set of rights. Once you do that, you leave someone out.
Yep.
The rights should be based on the one place where we're all equal, and that's human rights. And if we can all just get that, then we won't have to worry about the future generations.
So, Shonda, is it the lens that we look at it through? We're not looking at it through the right filter or lens, that it is human rights. And so if people aren't treated as humans,
right,
and people are treated differently, whoever they are, then that in fact breaches human rights, which is what
right.
and the intention of the Declaration of Human Rights, which most of us are familiar with, is exactly what you've said. But there's a fair way to go, isn't there, for everyone to look through that similar lens.
Right. We are so accustomed to looking at each other through the lens of classification.
Mm.
You know, we look at each other through labeling.
Mm.
You will never completely love a person or accept a person if all you see is the label. And what a way to minimize a person, you know, down to one tiny part of them. And sometimes it's the part of them that you will never see or encounter. So it's humanity is where we should all be basing this should be at the core. Humanity. We are all created equal in the humanity. We all have different abilities, we have different gifts, we have different opportunities, but the one place where we are all equal is that we are all humans, and we should have all the same rights based on that one fact.
And I often think of I'm not sure who I should attribute the statement to, but that notion that when it's not unusual for a woman to have done something, or for an African American woman or man to have done something, when it's not seen as unusual and it just happens as part of everyday life, then maybe we're a lot closer to that humanity and that human rights we're talking about. Because at the moment, if a person with a disability does something that's an achievement, it's seen as special. If a woman does it, it's special. So for me, I just feel that that lens that you put forward is a really interesting way to recalibrate how we view human rights.
I have to recalibrate myself, you know, because if we aren't careful because of the prejudices against us, we develop our own set to combat that. And, you know, not even firefighters fight fire with fire.
That's right.
You know, and so, you know,
they fight fire with something incredibly opposite.
Absolutely.
When we first met, you spoke about how often you felt we try to be great at what we're not supposed to do, we're not meant to do. How did you find what it is you're meant to be doing? How did you unpack that puzzle for yourself?
You know, if my mother were here, you know, I think she was probably one of the first unpackers of that. She would often talk about how many questions I asked. And she said you would always ask so many questions, and she could never tell me because I said so. That was never good enough for me. And I've always been inquisitive. I always ask the questions, and I'm willing to try something. And I think for me, how I found out was trial, error, and suppression. And when I say suppression is I spent a lot of years suppressing what I believe was just intrinsic in me. I tried to not ask all of the questions. I tried not to be as inquisitive, and I tried to just fit wherever I was, you know. And if I was around people who didn't talk a lot, I didn't talk a lot. You know, if I was around people who talked a lot, I would talk. If it wasn't interesting, I tried to be a part of it, and it just wasn't working for me. And there was a time in my life when I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And I was in school, and I thought, I'm going to be a gynecologist. That's what I wanted to be, OBGYN. I'm going to deliver babies. I'm going to be a part of women's health, and I'm going to help bring life into the world. And it was time for my externship. And I was paired with an OBGYN. And I arrived on time. 8 o'clock in the morning, halfway through the day, I realized this is not what I want to do. And I realized that day that I may not be a healer of bodies. I'm a healer of souls. You know, I want to deal with the brain. What makes people do the things that they do? And I'm going to stick with that. I'm not going to try to be something that I really don't want to be because I feel like I was pushed that way. You know, you should be a doctor. You should be a doctor. And I think a lot of times in African American families, because there's such great lack, we tend to push our children where we think they can make the most money.
Yep.
Instead of finding out who they are and nurturing what they love and teaching them that if you do what you love, it will take care of you. And I think there's a, you know, part of my life where I was pushed. You should be a doctor. You should be a doctor. You're really smart. You have steady hands. You should be a doctor. You learn things really fast. You catch on really good. And I tried to do that until I realized that's not what I want to do. And so it was trial and error, and until you hit that vein, of who you are, and you realize this is it. This is, and it's scary, but you realize that this is it. I like telling people the truth. I like talking to people. I like helping people realize you're more than what you have become. You are not what you do. And there's no force you will encounter that's greater than love. And that helps people learn to love themselves.
Yep.
And when they realize that you're a safe space, then they can change themselves.
So, Shonda, what are your superpowers? As a summary of our conversation today, what are your superpowers? And how do you think they've given you the platform to navigate challenges and barriers and to be this voice, this amplified voice? Because I know now, you know, you have speaking engagements, you're engaging with other people, you've engaged in speaking engagements around the Zonta community in North America. So what are your superpowers that have taken you to that?
You know, I have one superpower. I have one, and that is being authentically who I am. That is my superpower, not pretending to be anyone else, not trying to be something that I'm not. I'm not trying to fit in any space. I'm being authentically me all the time. I show up in a room as me because I realize I'm not a part of the plan for my life. I am the plan for my life. I was born to be me. And no one can be me better than me. No one can do what I was born to do better than me. You know, if imitation is free, but sauce is sold separately. I am great at being me, and that's my superpower. That is my superpower. If you can be you, not worrying about the outcome, not trying to manipulate anyone's opinion about you, if you can just be you and be honest with that, you become unstoppable.
So in what ways are you unstoppable? What is it that right now you're so unstoppable that you're really making a huge difference out in the world?
Because I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to be me. I'm not afraid to use my voice. I'm not afraid to say the hard things. And I'm not afraid to love people. And I think I didn't recognize the power of my voice. I didn't recognize it at all. I didn't recognize the power of sharing my story just by me sharing it. I realized it when it was coming back from those who were hearing it, and for those who shared, hearing your story changed my life. watching you move the way that you do and watching you feel so free in doing it made me want to do it. That's how I realized the value in being me. It was in the lives that were changed simply by experiencing me being me.
So as we wrap up this amazing conversation today, because you've shared so many ways in which, if we want, we can recalibrate, we can think differently about who we are or what our powers are. So what's your key message to leave with anyone who's listening and watching today?
Well, okay. I think there may be a couple of things I could leave. After our conversation, I spent a lot of time thinking, what makes me remarkable? And I looked at the list, of some of the remarkable women you had interviewed, before. And I was looking at their titles and I was reading, who they were. And I watched some of the interviews and I thought, these are remarkable women. They have done some amazing, life-changing things. And so it's like, what makes me a remarkable woman? And I spent a few days, with it, trying to find a way to put into words what I was feeling. And so I'll leave with this. And maybe it'll help someone else realize why they are remarkable too. One thing that makes me remarkable is getting over the shame that I felt for little Shonda and embracing the hero that she was, because she was amazing. And what she walked on as a kid, I would probably drown in as an adult. And realizing, instead of trying to get past that and push that away, I should embrace her for this merger that we can have, because she has all the survival skills. I have all the supplies. Together we can thrive and win. And then the linchpin that probably holds everything together and that would really make me a remarkable woman is the fact that I get to close my eyes and trust in the God that I cannot see to be my navigation system of love through a world that is dark and angry, and share that love with those who will not be able to give it back to me, because people who need love the most ask for it in the worst possible ways. And I've lived my life long enough to know that were it not for God, I'm not here. So I do the best that I can to live a life that honors and respects that. And I never try to put down my cross, no matter how heavy it is. And I think that makes me a remarkable woman. And so that's what I would leave. That's the message that I would leave.
Shonda, it's been an uplifting conversation with you today, absolutely uplifting. And that leaning into remarkable and embracing it is so important. And I'm so pleased to hear how you've expressed that today. You've uplifted me. You've left me with some things to think about. And I know that's how others will receive today's conversation. Zonda International thanks you for your generosity and time. And please enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you so much.
Thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.